and again, let's get them out on the table. So, Supervisor Desmond, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I agree in prioritizing reserves. I mean, I fear the rainy days coming back. But also, as I was thinking about the budget and driving around my district, I think a lot. And I've taken our county exec on a tour of the district with me, and Supervisor Frost and Chair Natoli. And, driving around a lot of these unincorporated areas, particularly environmental justice communities, of which there are 4 in the unincorporated community, something that always really strikes me is the I think proliferation of blight, vacant properties, really run down landscaped areas along some of the streetscapes. So something I've been, and I think that's a result of, by and large, the county's role as a municipal services entity in these unincorporated areas, a role that counties, frankly, aren't accustomed to doing. We're not created to do or to do well. So it's something I've been thinking about, and I wanted to propose this to my colleagues and see what they think about it, is setting aside some funds as a neighborhood improvement initiative. To really address blight and streetscape beautification along commercial corridors and neighborhood roads in unincorporated Sacramento County. And I would say maybe a majority of these funds would be dedicated specifically for environmental justice communities, where we really have seen, the lack of county investment and engagement is most profound in these communities. And my idea would be, some things to consider would be street light, and a lot of this would, we're investing a lot of money to improve the roadways in a lot of these communities, which is great, but a lot of times the streetscape doesn't come along with that. And so we're leaving large swaths of areas where we may not get to the roadways for a long time, but the street lighting, the above ground utility poles, the landscaping, whether that's on private property or a publicly maintained area, is really run down. And some areas we've done a great job, clearly in the unincorporated areas, but it feels like in some of the lower income communities in particular, it's worse. But landscaping, and even including strategies to encourage transforming vacant parcels into housing or new businesses. I think to myself, who might be involved in something like this? I certainly DOT, maybe even code enforcement from the county, park districts, neighborhood community associations, PBIDs, chambers, and maybe CPACs could become a venue where ideas could be proposed. And I know this is more conceptual at this point, but I think it's certainly a big need in the unincorporated county, and my proposal would be to rope off $3 million for this purpose. And those are my thoughts, and curious what my colleagues think about it.
Okay, Supervisor Frost.
Well, I'm always a proponent for more reserves, and I also feel grateful that you, Ann Edwards and Amanda and all the deputy county executives and all the departments have done such a great job helping us get here. I think these ideas have real merit, and I just, regarding Supervisor Cerna's thoughts, I support the idea of a pilot and trying something and thoughtfully working through that. I don't know how to do as much as we need, so it would just be like everything else. But it seems like we're doing everything we can, so I support trying a different angle, although I'm also still really excited about the safe stays and one that's potentially going to be in my district. So I hope that's still moving forward. And I really like your idea, Supervisor Desmond, and the idea that we could maybe work through the P-bids and, I'm hoping we can do this in a way that's not just throwing money at something, but that we thoughtfully think through it, so that there's a plan that, we have confidence is going to work forward. That's all. I guess what you're suggesting is holding that money aside in the budget and then beginning the process to work through it. Is that what you're both suggesting? I think that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
For me, that was certainly my thought as well. Yeah, and I've done some research. Center for Community Progress, Urban Institute. There've been an awful lot of scholarly articles about the impacts of blight and vacant parcels in communities, from an economic perspective, and also there's one great quote: "Vacant and blighted properties make people feel less safe and less proud of their neighborhoods." I mean, I think that is a real problem in a lot of our communities in the unincorporated county, especially in the environmental justice communities, certainly so.
And I think the ordinance that we just passed is going to go a long way to helping this situation also around the communities. So I guess those are my thoughts. I don't have extra requests. I was excited about the reserves. It doesn't look like it's going that direction, but we have some new exciting projects to wrap our heads around. So thank you.
Haven't heard them all yet.
Yeah, no, it's like
Yeah, that's for last.
Supervisor Stern. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. I appreciate Supervisor Desmond's interest and comments, and they're all well taken. I like the idea of a kind of a different team approach that involves all the groups that Mr. Desmond suggested, code and P-bids and DOT. I can't help but reflect on the fact that, and there's a lot of different reasons for it, but there are other parts of district I represent that are in the city of Sacramento that are currently really suffering quite a bit in terms of the feeling of the corridor being safe and clean, and I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a tipping point at some point in time where people begin to divest themselves in where they live and where they go to work, where they play, where they worship. And, I think it's incumbent upon us to do what we can when we feel it as palpably as we do that is looming to try and intervene and do something different. So I'd be entirely supportive of what Supervisor Desmond has suggested.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Supervisor Kennedy.
Thank you. Just briefly, I too would be supportive. One thing is to include SHRA in the discussion. I know that in South Sacramento, we've been very successful working with SHRA and CDBG money for exactly what you're talking about, LED lighting. When I got elected, they said, well, we don't do lighting in existing neighborhoods. And I said, that's stupid. They, not anybody at SHRA, and SHRA stepped up and we worked together, and we've gotten a lot of lighting in there, as well as DOT has been a very good partner. Done the same thing in parks with, even though we don't have county parks in District 2, they're Southgate primarily, worked with Southgate to replace dilapidated, defunct play areas in parks. That's been very successful, and all that's been done with CDBG. So I think that needs to be a part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, good suggestion. Yeah, I would just speak to it. I think good comments by my colleagues. But, the livability, and I think, often we focus in on the enforcement side of it, code enforcement or, some other aspect of that. And I think, as we talk, through this, that there are some dollars, obviously block grant for some of the environmental justice neighborhoods. Not every place in the county is eligible, but some may still have some of the circumstances that Supervisor Desmond pointed out. And I think that there a lot to be said for, like the livability, the quality of life, and a lot of things we do certainly affect the quality of life. But part of it is that when some of our older established neighborhoods have seen the wear and tear just of time, and and whether it's vacant lots or it's properties that need some freshening up. Again, obviously there's the private sector part of this and the public sector, but I think the county can be a good partner. And again, we talked earlier about the property tax system and so forth. Well, that is a revenue generator certainly for this county, and and it's not just about property values. It's about the quality of life within those homes, within those domiciles, within those neighborhoods. And I think it's probably long past due. We've taken some of these on in bits and pieces over the years, but I would concur that both suggestions, they're sizable sums of money. But I do think that if we're going to invest in neighborhoods and in people from all walks of life, and then I think that these are modest amounts, as characterized what we're trying to do. Obviously, when the problem gets more severe and people are unhoused or have other serious issues, and so I would see that what you suggested, Supervisor Desmond, and again I think the partners you outlined. Again maybe some investments in the parks, working with your CPACs, with your PBIDs, all of those things, are good. And again, to me, $3 million is a very modest amount. And again, I probably won't be here for full program development in the months ahead, but I think it's exciting, and I think it's a compliment to some of the other comments we heard today and the correspondence. So it's about if people are going and they're going to live somewhere, and and if they can pick and choose, maybe their economics will drive where they can pick and choose. It ought to be as nice in a modest neighborhood as it is somewhere else in the community. And so I think that this is an opportunity to at least be a catalyst for that. So I'm very supportive of your idea.